Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to the Middle East Forum's webinar and podcast series, Israel Insider, this week with Alex Selsky. I'm Stacey Roman, and I will be moderating this discussion today. We are pleased to have Alex Selsky, a senior advisor to MEF's Israel Victory Project and lecturer at Hadassah Academic College, join us this week to update us on all the events going on in Israel. Mr. Selsky will be giving us a briefing on current Israeli affairs for 15 minutes, then open it up for questions. Should you wish to ask a question, please use the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen to type your question. With that, I'll turn the discussion over to Mr. Alex Selsky.
Hello, good evening from Jerusalem and good afternoon for you, dear listeners. I always, when I hear Stacey opens and says all news or all happening in Israel, I always think to myself, it's impossible to tell about everything that happens in Israel in 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 2 hours. You always have to pick, the most important news because so many things happen. And as we announced the topic of this webinar always few days in advance, we always know that big things will happen between the day of the announcement of the topic and the day of the lecture of the webinar. And it always happens. So this week, that's exactly the case again, where, when on Sunday and even before that, we thought what would be or should be the major event in Israel. And then it seemed that the major event is the Netanyahu trial that some may say fall apart and some may say, to have troubles. And we will definitely expand on that. But since then, we had the operation in Jenin, which definitely is the major event of the passing this week. And also today, we had another very, very big event of the Tel Aviv police commander resigned after pressure of the Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir. We will speak about that, and then we will also touch another news from also today about an Israeli woman having also a Russian citizenship that was kidnapped a few months ago by a terrorist organization, Hezbollah branch in Iraq. So these are the issues, the major issues that we will speak about. We will not have time to speak about another very, very major issue that in Israel is very talked about, is soccer, Israeli young team. But, this is not our ticket. But also, believe me, Israel has other things in life beyond politics and security. But yes, first thing that we definitely should speak about is Netanyahu trial. Past Wednesday, exactly when you had the previous Israel Insider, we had the interview of the former police chief that was serving then when all the investigations against Netanyahu took place, Ronnie Al-Sheikh. And he actually said that we didn't think, I'm quoting him, he said that we didn't think that Netanyahu will stay. We saw in front of us the case of Ehud Olmert, who resigned after the investigations, after the allegations were presented, and we were sure that Netanyahu will resign. And definitely everybody in the political system, those who are in favor, those who are against the trial, said that actually Al-Sheikh, by this quote, definitely stated openly that they hoped that he would resign. And that again proves that all these cases and all these trials were organized attempts by the police and by the prosecution and supported by a big part of an Israeli elite, definitely within the legal system, to cause a resign of Netanyahu, to make him resign. And another major thing that happened since then is the evidence of Arnon Milchan, which has his evidence not in Israel, in London, and Sarah Netanyahu also is presenting in the court in London, and Netanyahu here, Benjamin Netanyahu here, watches the evidence. And to summarize the evidence, it definitely doesn't fit the prosecution's claim, because we see very different evidence from the evidence that he gave to the police in the beginning, stating today. And I want to remind you that his evidence primarily is in the what we call it the 1,000 case number 1,000. Yeah, if you don't follow, I can remind you that we have the case number 1,000, which is, we call it the presence case of champagne and cigars, right? That Milchan was providing by the prosecution, right? To the Netanyahu's family, and Netanyahu's position of his lawyers is that it was friendship. So Milchan actually approved that it was friendship, that it was normal, it was okay. He didn't count it. It was not a result of a demand from the side of Netanyahu. So he says, I didn't see a problem, and I still don't see a problem. We're still friends, and as friends, it's okay. Now, the prosecution tried to connect this to the request of Milchan to get visa as an Israeli to the United States, some special visa, and he wanted to do it fast. And finally, he says, I did it without any connection to Netanyahu. I did ask him, but he didn't do anything with it. So he minimizes the whole connection. So at the moment, it seems weaker and weaker. And the prosecution wants to try to lower the importance of this evidence, and the judges doesn't let them. So we see that in this case, definitely Milchan's evidence doesn't help the prosecution. And the other bigger thing, much bigger thing, is that few days ago, in the most significant case within the Netanyahu cases, and again, I want to remind, the 1,000 is presence, 2,000 is the exchange of interests, right, between Netanyahu and Noni Moses, the owner of the biggest then Israeli newspaper, Yediot Ahronot. 3,000 is the submarine case. Netanyahu is not connected, and the 4,000 is the only case where he's charged on bribery. Two Israeli businessmen, then owner of Bezek, a big communication company, and Israeli big news portal Walla. And this week, the judges actually said to prosecution, we don't see how you can continue claim bribery. We don't see how you can really approve that, and we think that you should definitely consider to cancel this. And that's a big thing, because if there is no bribery charge within the cases, so all the other things which are fraud and breach of trust, but still fraud and breach of trust are very very kind of a vague charges. Bribery is the major claim, the major weapon that the prosecution had, and if today the judges say that we don't see how you can continue and keep this charge, it definitely shows that they have a big problem. Now, immediately after that, a previous a prosecutor of Israel said that, we see that the judges, are very weak and they don't understand, and how come, and they're not professional. So immediately, those who are in favor of the case said, okay, but if it was the opposite, nobody wouldn't speak. So now when we see that Netanyahu's claim is stronger, so all the people come and say, okay, now the judges are not good enough. So we see that it's not about justice; it's about a very, very organized attempt to let him resign against him, and that's the situation. Now, what it will mean to the future immediately, it definitely will. I think we will see that in the polls. I'm sure we will see that in the security, self-esteem of Netanyahu and his camp. We will definitely see that in continuation of the opposition to press. But more and more and more and more, we see judges speak that even all of these cases can fall apart. So that's, I think that it's it's a game changer this week in these cases, and we get to boiling point of the cases, and from now it can all go, to the different direction. Now, operation in Jenin, again, definitely, the very fact that it happened this week, so again, was used, by politicians and by opposition to Netanyahu, saying that, he does this operation because he wants, to spin the attention of the media. I don't think so. I don't believe that, Israeli establishment does risk lives of Israeli soldiers for this purpose, and again, I don't see that Netanyahu really needs it. He wins at the moment. So this operation was actually very limited in Jenin, and many spoke that all the right wing wanted something bigger because Jenin became really a cradle of terror. And we could see and expect that if we don't now do some serious operation, that it can become Gaza, because Islamic Jihad and Hamas within Jenin could start to produce rockets, and if Jenin becomes Gaza, so all the Galilee and up to south, to Tel Aviv will be another area threatened by the rockets. So it's definitely a very big threat that must be stopped. And this operation had to, enable easier operation of IDF in the future. Very high criticism that it's not enough. IDF and the political and the military establishment try to convince that it's only the beginning, that it's small operation, but it will enable more operations. Let's see. And one Israeli soldier was killed at the very last moment of this operation, who is coming from Judea and Samaria, from Bet El, which again was used by the politician, claiming that we see in the army, those who come from the right, and then again were those who said, we see the officers that will finish the operation, then we'll come back to the anti-reform anti-reform movement in the streets, and then some people said, look at the officers who serve, and in this operation, all the commanders are right-wingers and religious. Okay, so again, we see even in this operation, which is definitely in consensus, again, political and social arguments over, who is, over camps within the Israeli society, and that's very painful to see. And that brings us again to Ami Eshed, Israeli Tel Aviv police commander, who resigned today after pressure of the Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and he had a speech, very political speech against the government, against Netanyahu, against Ben-Gvir. Everybody, immediately jumped on that and said that now we understand that the pressure of the minister was justified, and that he definitely was a left winger and against the government. And immediately after he resigned, we see that the protesters that now protest in Tel Aviv are treated much less gently than they were before. Let's see if we see a change in that treatment, but it's definitely also a game changer in treatment of this anti-reform movement within the Israeli society. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is the kidnapping of Israeli woman, which again has Russian citizenship. She's in Iraq. Only today it was published, even though it happened few months ago. She has Russian citizenship, but as Prime Minister's office announced, Russians don't care for her and see her as Israeli. She came to Iraq by Russian passport doing PhD research for Princeton University. So for Iraq, I hope it's not only case, of relations with Israel, but also with the US. Let's see where it takes us. It will be, I think, very followed, as she's a woman, and Israel definitely must act to bring her back, and I think it will be pressure by the Israeli society. And we are exactly on 17 minutes past 10, so I think that we will continue to the questions, please.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So David Levine asked, the initial report on the IDF raid in Jenin indicated a huge cache of weapons hidden in a mosque. This would appear to be a perfect event to use for Israel's Hezbollah, but the government seems to have gone silent on this. Can you comment?
We speak about it all the time. It's, this is the case of every operation in Gaza. It's not about mosques only. It's about schools and kindergartens and residential houses. We definitely use that. I can tell that as a former advocacy emissary of the Jewish Agency to New York during the Second Intifada, and as spokesman of the Jewish Agency, and as a spokesman, media advisor for the Prime Minister previously, and I dealt many times with advocacy. We definitely speak about it all the time. But I do think that today, it's much more common and known. And I think we less speak, and if you ask me, we less should speak about it, not because it's wrong and not because we don't have to legitimize the terrorists, but because I think after all, we must show that we are strong, that we are victorious, and that we defeat the terror. And that's how we will pull back all the criticism, doing it by power and not by justice, not because we're not just, but because justice doesn't work. Okay, Jews had lots of justice in Germany in 20s, or in 13th century in Spain, and I can give you another 100 examples, but being without power, it didn't help. So rights, they are wrong, we are right, they are bad, we are good. After all, countries support strong states and not just states. So we should defeat the terror, and everybody knows, Jihad and Hamas are terror organizations. accepted as terror organization in Europe, in Japan, in Australia, in the States. I don't think we should go and repeat. Everybody knows that they're terrorists. We should defeat the terrorists. That's the goal.
Thank you. And on that note, Carrie Hillebrand asks, how does the government plan to deal with the ongoing Hezbollah intrusion into Israeli territory in the Golan?
That's a major threat. That's a major challenge. IDF definitely is working very hard, and the government definitely works very hard on dealing with the threat from Lebanon, from Hezbollah. It's taken very seriously. But you're right. We see more and more self-esteem of Hezbollah. You know, I remind you a few months ago, the terror attack on within Israel done by Hezbollah, and the fire of rockets from Lebanon, even though it was done by Hamas, but definitely with permission and support of Hezbollah. Some will tell you that it means that we don't have enough deterrence. Some will say that it's a result of bad gas agreements with Hezbollah. Some will definitely tell you, I remind you again, our webinars and lectures, a few months ago, when everybody in the world thought and spoke about the fact that Israeli society is divided and weakened, and now the enemies will try us. But we should not only listen to what our enemies say, we should look at what they do. So far, we see very little attempts of Hezbollah and, very big talk as always, but very little action. It doesn't mean that things cannot happen. It doesn't mean that things cannot develop in a minute. Israel must treat Hezbollah seriously. Israel must deliver a message that, and it does. I remind you the speech of the chief of staff and speech of the head of the military intelligence a few weeks ago, that Hezbollah will do a very big mistake if they'll start something, because, and I really hope that Israel, if it happens, will go on a big operation and defeat Hezbollah. And I really hope that that's what Israel prepares to do, because otherwise, if it happens and Israel doesn't defeat, Iran will get more and more and more appetite, and we will continue losing on this front. So yes, Hezbollah definitely a big threat, and Israel prepares and deals with it. And by the way, Jenin is connected. Look at the map. Okay, look at the Galilee. Okay, Galilee. You have Jenin is from the south, and Lebanon is from the north. So when you eliminate the threat of Jenin, you also kind of treat one of the threats and one of the fronts in order to be able, then if Hezbollah opens another front, to be much more concentrated to deal with Hezbollah without having in the south, in your front, in your backyard, also Jenin and also Gaza. So I think that what government does, it's step by step eliminates small fronts and small threats to be prepared for the bigger one. Again, I don't think it's enough. We in Middle East Forum and Israel Victory Project don't think it's enough. Not in Gaza, not in Jenin. The government does something. Let's hope that it will be done much better and more in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you. Barak Korkmaz asks, what is your opinion on the Turkish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hakan Fidan's words about Middle East peace? As he mentioned in the non-aligned movements meeting at Baku, key to Middle East peace is a sovereign Palestine state according to the 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as their capital and living side by side with Israel. Could you comment on that?
I think it's I'm not a very big expert on Turkey, but I think, from what I understand and follow the Turkish and not only Turkish politics, I think this is partly lap service for Arab states, partly lap service for his home audience and for his president, which wants to, as we say in Hebrew, to dance on all the weddings, to be Israeli friend, but but by the way, this opinion we hear from also our new friends, Arab states, because they understand that they must remember and mention Palestinian solution to the Palestinian problem. Okay, so he said, okay, you can say it too.
Fair point. Leonard Sands asks, can you explain why the current cases seem to be going on endlessly? We've been talking about it for months. Can you explain that to us?
Again, Netanyahu's cases?
Yes.
Well, I invested the most of my my time to explain these cases, so I'll try to say it again. Okay, we have 4 cases.
Oh, sorry, not so much what they are, but why exactly are they going on so long? Like he mentions here, criminal
why so
trial
long?
case. Yes, yeah.
That's our beloved legal system, which is, some say that it always takes so long because it's very, very, very overwhelmed. This is right. Israeli legal system is very overwhelmed. By the way, some people say, if you want really to promote changes to the legal system, to the judicial reform, and you really want to make significant change, don't go for the things that you speak about, in Levin program. Go for at least, adding judges and making cases to be held much easier and faster. I can tell you that I had, something very, very small, it could some economic. My wife sued one of the food chains, okay, for some kind of group action, and it took 2 years on nothing. Okay, on nothing. We got 6,000 shekels after all. Okay, it was something very small. Yes, it takes really, really long. That's the sickness of the legal system of Israel, because they're overwhelmed. Jews love to fight, and and to sue each other. And we are people of arguments, and where you argue the best. In trial. Why? Because trial comes and tells, you're right, you're wrong. So it's the best model for arguing. That's also one of the explanations. But definitely we have one of the highest percentage of trials per capita. That's the price. And also I think that, in this case of Netanyahu's cases, in the heavier cases, everything takes more time because much more attempt is invested into it. So yeah, so that's the case.
Thank you so much for that. Circling back, Jack Wasserman asks, where did the munitions in Jenin come from?
Yes, there is a very, very big problem of huge amounts of weapon in first of all, in the Arab sector in Israel, primarily within the Bedouin community, primarily in the south, but not only, and definitely in the Palestinian villages and towns. Well, first of all, much of it is stolen from IDF. Much of it is bought and smuggled from abroad. Much of it, there is a huge market of used ammunition within the Palestinian Authority. Some of it is result of Oslo Accords and the weapons that were given to them. Again, many of this weaponry also is self-made, and we know that there are many labs, less professional, more professional, that do some not professional weapons. In many times these are not new M16 or Kalashnikovs. Yeah, these are very old, repaired or prepared. Definitely, when you speak not about the automatic weapons, but about pistols or about bombs. Bombs you can go online and learn how to prepare a bomb, okay, or basic chemistry, and do something. And now today, in the era of internet, think about the exchange of the knowledge between Lebanon and Gaza and Jenin, and even wherever. It can come directly from Iran. I can remind you that Israeli police and Shin Bet arrest people that were involved in training of ISIS in Syria from Israel. So it's not so hard today, via Turkey, to go with having, let's say, Jordanian passport, okay, to go to wherever you want and to bring any knowledge you want, and to in sophisticated way to bring things. Now we try definitely to stop it, but you have huge smuggling from Egypt, huge smuggling from Syria, huge smuggling from Lebanon. Now these last 10-15 years it stopped, but this weaponry entered Israel 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and still in action. So yes, this is a big problem, and Israeli police and army and Shin Bet do lots of operation to lots like this to confiscate these weapons, but there are so many of them, and again, big part of it stealing from IDF. We see cases of Bedouins enter into Israeli IDF bases in the Negev in the south, and just stealing, and not always, unfortunately, IDF and police can find them, or find them but not find the weapon.
All right, well, thank you so much. We've come to the close of our webinar and podcast. Alex, thank you again for taking time to update us this week.
Thank you.
Of course. And for our viewers and listeners, please, nice reminders, we will not be hosting a webinar this Friday. Please be on the lookout for our weekly webinar offerings email coming out over the weekend. Thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.